Hi, I'm Tony, and welcome to my channel, Watch Time LA. Hello folks, today we have a special episode coming your way, and I've titled this Really Cheap Watches, and you'll see why as we go through this video. There's a whole class of watches that people call beater watches or tool watches. These are everyday watches where they're suitable to wearing every day, but you don't really care if you nick them or damage them. Well, you don't want to damage them, but nick them up, get them beat up a little bit. In fact, on some of the watches, you prefer having a couple of dings and dents. Kind of gives it that authentic feel after a while. But the watches we're going to be looking at today have a very unique feature about them. In fact, not a single one of these watches reaches $10 US. That's right, under $10 watches. Believe it or not, there are many, many to choose from. In fact, this Casio right here, I bought brand new for, I think it was $9.50. And this is the upgraded version from the basic version. So anyway, by the way, I got to work on that. I say anyway a lot. I'm going to clip it out of this one, and maybe I'll leave it in this one. But regardless of how much I spend for a watch, I get just as excited when they come in the mail and I open them up for the first time. One of the watches I was most disappointed with since I started watch collecting was actually a Tissot Swiss-made automatic watch, which I got recently, and it is their Visodate watch, and I was extremely disappointed in that watch. I didn't pay anywhere near the retail asking price of it. Got it on the gray market, but overall completely disappointed in a lot of aspects of the watch. I kept it. I could have easily brought it back, but I decided not to. I wore it several times now. Kind of looks good, but there was a lot of quality issues, and what I'll do is I'll put, hopefully right about here, a link to that review so you can make your own judgment. Now, I do have Tissot watch. I have a Swiss watch on me right now, which this is a Costco buy. I'll put another link up here in a couple of seconds about this particular watch. I already did a review on this. I love this watch. And if there is a tool watch or a beater watch, this has turned into it for me, although it's probably on the high price side. If I had to pick the perfect beater watch, it would probably be my Seiko 5. And I've done a review on that as well. And if it doesn't get too busy, I'll put another link to the Seiko 5 up on the top here in a second. But all of these watches came to me in various ways. Some I actually ordered, some from Amazon, some from eBay. Some I got in watch buys where I've bought watches. For instance, this one, I buy watches by the pound on eBay, literally. 10 pounds of watches for $29. And I take them and make them work again, bring them back to life. Here's a Timex from the 70s. We'll get into all these in a little bit, but this is what people were wearing in the 70s. This is very common. I just put a band on it and polished the case and polished the acrylic lens to make it look kind of like new on the lens part, not so much on the case. I got a watch today. This is what inspired this video, by the way. I got a watch today from China. In fact, let me move these out of the way for a minute. I'm not too worried about scratching them up, but I got this from China, and I opened it up just a little while ago. Just as excited, I'm always excited to see what comes in the mail, just like a kid. I love opening Amazon boxes, even though I know what's in them. So I ordered this watch directly from an eBay seller from China. They had, the typical China, some bad, some good, but, they were like 98% positive, but they sold thousands of items. So, I bought many, many things from China, and I've never had a single problem other than occasionally they ship the wrong item or the wrong color, and we'll go into that in a bit, I'll explain, but Anyway, this came in a very generic, this is China Post, by the way. Everything they sell, most of the stuff they sell at China Post is free shipping. I don't know how they do it on some of these very inexpensive items. For instance, this particular watch is shipped, packaged very nicely in another bag, and I paid $3 US, free shipping. How they do it, I don't know. The bag and the shipping alone in the US would be $3. So let's take a look at the watch and tell me if you notice any problems. Yep, what you see right there is the second hand floating around, and watch the minute hand. Pretty nice, huh? So the second hand has fallen off and it's just floating around in there. And the minute hand is flopping back and forth. So that's what you get for $3. However, there's a reason for the minute hand flopping around. I've seen that many times, and it's actually by design. I'll explain that in a minute. But let's take a look at the watch. This band seems every bit as good as the one that came on my Seiko 5, actually, this canvas band. It's very heavy gauge. The buckle is also very heavy gauge. I doubt it's stainless, but it's still pretty good band. In fact, I would say that in addition to the packing and the shipping, this band, if I just bought it to put on another watch, I would pay $3 for this. It's very, very heavy duty. Very well done. Both sides, a little piece of leather. The case is just some base metal, but it's solid. That's important. And the back simply says stainless steel back. Any watch that says stainless steel back, what they're telling you is that the back is stainless steel and everything else is not. This could be base metal, it could be any type of base metal. It could be pot metal, which is the cheapest type of metal there is. In fact, let me give you an example of what a good watch would say. Sorry, this thing's a little bit messy. I put some lotion on. This says sapphire coated crystal. See where it says here? All stainless steel. That means that everything on this watch, stainless, stainless, stainless. The bezel stainless. This is stainless. So that's the difference between where it says stainless or when it says stainless steel back. Now, what are we going to do with this watch? Obviously, I'm not going to return it. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little surgery today, and we're going to take the second hand and we're going to put it back on. And I'm going to show you why that minute hand's flopping around. That part's easy. In shipping, a lot of watches, even expensive watches, come with these little spacers. What that does is it stops the crown from going all the way in. And it's kind of like a hacking feature. When you pull this plastic out, my nails are so short I can't do it, and you push the crown in, what will happen is you'll see that the minute hand will no longer flop around. It engages all of the gears and keeps the minute hand solid. If I pull it out again, you'll see that the minute hand will float around. Now I see this in some cheap movements, so it's pretty common. But the second hand falling off is not so common. Right now it's jammed up there. It looks like it's at the 12 o'clock position, but it's just kind of jammed up there. I'll change the lighting and I'll open this up. We'll see what we can do to fix it. Okay, now keep in mind that I'm reaching around a camera on a tripod. So some of this is going to be a little bit tricky. But in order to fix this little problem that we have, I am going to pop the case back open with a case back opener. There are many different versions of this, but this is my favorite, the rounded version. And we're just going to find, sometimes there's a little tab to pull up on. I can already tell there's not one on this. Oh, there it is. It's in a bad place though. It's right next to the crown. So that was a really stupid place to put that. So we're going to pop the case open. You see that tab right here at the 12 o'clock position right now. That should never be near the crown. In this case it was, and it was fairly easy to open. I've not opened it before, but you saw how easy it was open. And what we have here now is the movement and the spacer. Spacer is taking up most of the insides, and the battery, movement, and this is the dial. It's a big dial, so let me see if we can zoom in here and get you a better picture here. Here we go. Okay, so we have to take out the crown in order to get the guts out so we can fix this thing. And if you see, there's a little divot right here. It's kind of hard to see. They're in different places on different watches and on different movements. And all you have to do is press in on the divot and boop. There goes the crown. Crown is out. Now we're going to carefully turn the watch over. And there is our problem. The little hand is now on the mat. You see it right here. Okay, so we have to put that back on the watch. There's a couple of things we have to do. We have to get it directly on there without damaging the dial, and then we have to push it back down. There's tools, again, I got these from China. They come in a set of 3, and it's very difficult to see, but I'm going to see if you see the diameter of that hole, and then if we turn it over, the diameter of that one is much larger. So depending on which hand you're putting on will determine which one of those you need. That particular one handles pretty much all of them, although I have ones that get much wider and much smaller. And if you check this out, the top of that, you're going to see a little raised, well, it's hard to see here. You'll see a little raised piece of metal where that hand is going to snap on. But I'm going to put this under the scope so you'll get an excellent view of what's about to happen. Okay, so what you're seeing here are the minute and hour hands. First thing I'm going to do is take my tool. I'm going to use the little wider open end. By the way, I'm sacrificing my view greatly for your view. I'm going to take my tool, see if I can get a view here. So it's going to be a side view. Let me try and focus that better. Okay. And I'm going to push down in the middle to make sure that the minute hand is well secured down. Oh, and I felt it snap, actually. So that's a good sign. It went down further than it was. So that means that was about to fall off as well. If you look in the center, the very center, this little pin here, that's what we're going to be putting the second hand on. The minute hand rides on a tube, and the hour hand rides on a bigger tube. So you have a tube coming up out of the dial for the hour hand, a smaller tube inside that for the minute hand, and then the second hand just has a pin. Now on watches with only 2 hands, obviously there's no center pin, and this part of the hand is completely closed. Now I'm going to put the second hand under the scope for a minute to show you that there are 2 sides. Let me get a good grip on it here. I'm going to lay it on here for a second. So if you see, the second hand has a side with a hole in it, and the other side is completely solid on most of them, but although not all of them. And this little tiny pin has to go into that little tiny hole, and it has to be lined up perfectly. So what I do is I make sure that I use one of the other hands as leverage. By the way, if your tweezers are magnetized in any way, you will not be able to do this. You get a little better focus here. Now you see the top of the second hand. Actually, this one does have a hole. I'm going to make sure that, oops, you see how easily that moves. I got to make sure that I'm right smack in the middle here. So I got this thing basically balanced on that little pin. So I'm going to take my tweezers and I'm going to put them together very, very carefully. And I'm going to press ever so slightly to make sure it's in the right place. Oops, it moved a little bit. Let's see. Okay, so it's going down. It's going down. If I push too hard with the tweezers, I will bend the second hand. So that's where my tool comes in. I don't normally do this, but I have to put this at a pretty severe angle so you guys can see what I'm doing. A little bit more. Okay. And I'm going to take my tool and I'm going to use it to push down right smack in the middle of the second hand. Not going to push hard. I just felt it click. Just clicked. So now all the hands are lined up. Not lined up, but all nice and tight on their respective shafts. And now we can put the watch back together again. By the way, these tools that I'm using here that you see with these ends on them, they're just a set of 3, I think was about $4. So you can get them pretty cheaply, or you could use something similar, although I don't know what that would be. We're going to switch back to another view. Okay, we're going to put this watch back together. This was not a repair video, but it seemed perfect opportunity to show you how to put hands back on the watch. Now, I'll have a complete tutorial on how to do this because there's a lot more to it when you're dealing with a watch with a date and hour hands and minute hands, how everything needs to be lined up perfectly when you put those hands back on. Second hand doesn't matter so much, especially on a cheap watch like this. But before I put this back together, I'm going to make absolutely sure I don't have any fingerprints or dust inside this thing, because the last thing I want to do is get it all together and say, oh my God, I put a big thumbprint on there. So I'm going to take the time to make sure it's cleaned out both sides. Looks pretty darn good to me. Let me check one more time here. All right, so I'm glad I took the extra time because there was actually a little piece of dust or something inside there that was very difficult to get out. I'm going to not use canned air for this. I'm going to just blow off. Now you see how easily that minute hand moves around? That will stop once it's engaged with the crown. But I'm going to make sure I'm at 3. The clock position, I'm going to put it back into the case. I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to put this back in, the spacer, make sure it's seated all the way down. I'm going to make sure that everything's lined up perfectly with 3 o'clock. And this is not quite perfect yet. I'm going to move it just a little more. Take the crown, make sure it's lined up. Tenderly push in as I twist so that I don't break anything. And with any luck, look at that. Tick, 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 tick. The second hand is back in. It's working perfectly. And my $3 watch, which many people would have probably thrown in the trash at this point, is working. And the case doesn't have, I just want to make sure, doesn't have an O-ring or anything, so there's nothing to lubricate. This watch cannot be wet. I mean, you could wash your hands with it probably, but nothing more than that. Otherwise, it's going to get water in it. There's no water protection at all. Snapping it back in. In fact, it doesn't snap in very well, but it's in there all the way. And there's the tab I was talking about. I've never ever seen one in the same position of the crown, because in order to get it off, oops, you basically have to pry against the crown, and you could bend the stem. Not a good idea, but I'm going to get back to the regular point of this video, but now you see how to put a missing second hand on. In fact, I might just pull this clip out and put this up separately as well. Okay, back to our topic of really cheap watches. So here's my $3 watch, all working again. Here is a watch that I purchased again from China on eBay. It took about a month to get to my house. This is the infantry band. You'll see this all over eBay. They're really cheap, tinny, whatever. I do wear this actually quite a bit. Every time I wear my green shorts and my green t-shirt in Southern California here is quite often I'm wearing shorts and t-shirts. Unfortunately for you guys in the Midwest and back east. Another band, look at the band. I mean, I love the band on this watch. It's very extremely comfortable, more comfortable than this one, I'm sure, but it's extremely comfortable. In fact, this band is more comfortable than the one that came with the Seiko because it has this, whether it's leather or pleather, I'm not quite sure. But I wear this all the time when I'm knocking things up around the house and I really don't want to damage anything. I don't care if this thing breaks or shatters or whatever. And it's, so far, it's held up pretty good. What do you think? $1.99. This watch came in a whole batch of watches. It's never been used. It was brand new when I got it. Still had the tag on the back. I doubt any of this is stainless steel. But I mean, if you just want to know what time it is, I'm going to bet this watch cost me, a new battery included, 50 cents. Okay. Here's a watch that I got in another big barrel of watches that I paid pennies for on the dollar. This is an old Timex. This is what everyone used to wear in the 60s and 70s. They were just like this. I put it on a brand new alligator leather strap, genuine leather strap. And, you know, I kind of wear it once in a while just for nostalgia purposes. I polished the acrylic crystal to a high luster and cleaned the dial. New leather strap. It's only about 37 millimeters, 36 millimeters, like all the watches were back then. I'm gonna say I'm invested in this watch about $2.75. Let's go to my dress watch, okay? This watch I wore actually to a court proceeding one time. I was in a really crappy area and I had to stay in a really crappy hotel in a really it was a, I don't remember what kind of hotel it was. And I didn't want to take any nice watches with me because I was afraid that, literally afraid that someone would break into the room I was in. That's how bad it was. But I wanted something that looked presentable if the thing peeked out under my shirt and I wanted to know what time it was. And it actually even has a lume on it. So this Yazol is another thing that you'll see on eBay quite a bit. It's a quartz watch, whatever that 322 means, I don't know. But again, very hollow sounding. Actually, not quite as bad as the other. And it says here, stainless steel back, water resistant. This one does happen to have a gasket on it. It actually has a crown guard, and it's about 40 something millimeters. And look, genuine, where does that say? Come on, genuine leather. I assume it's real. 22 millimeter strap, and it looks pretty good actually. I think this one cost me $3.45, and couldn't be happier with it for what I used it for. Let's go to my favorite really cheap watch. This is an Elgin watch. Whoever owned this watch loved it and wore the heck out of it. When I got it, inexplicably, one of the indices was missing. Where it went, I don't know, because when I opened the case, I couldn't find it. So that means someone had opened the case before, and I found another one. You see the 11 o'clock indice does not look like the rest of them. Well, I found another busted up watch, and I found one that actually fit right in there. Of course, it's not the right size, but it's close enough. This has a day and the date, and it works perfectly. And actually the lume on it isn't bad at all. It has a rotating bezel that actually rotates, although I don't know why it rotates. And it has a screw down case back and a screw down crown. The bracelet is in fantastic shape, and it has a double deployment clasp with a locking device. Look at that. Whoever wore this wore it so much that they wore down the case. And if you look at the crown, the knurls have been worn off on the guy's wrist. You see the knurls are on this side, but they're gone on this side. And it actually has a screw down crown, which means you have to unscrew the crown. You see it pops out there? And then screw it back down again to set the time and the date. So this is extremely water resistant. It says it's good to 100 feet, but I'll bet you it's better than some of the other watches that I've seen that say they're 100 feet because of the screw down case and the gasket and the screw down crown. I paid in another batch of watches, I'm gonna guess, my net after a lot of labor I put into it, polishing it up and whatnot. But I really wanted to bring this back to life and use it because whoever used this used it for years and years. I'm gonna say this watch has been used for 20 years. What would it take to wear a watch down like that? I've never seen anything like it. So I had to bring it back from the dead. It was all kinds of corrosion down here. It is a base metal case, and you see a lot of the finishes just gone off it. But I think I probably paid $2 for this thing. And I wear it pretty regularly. I know you're saying how you could wear all these watches, but this is one of my favorites for knocking around. And then the most expensive watch I have in this bunch is my Casio, and I think I paid $9.99 for it from Amazon. It has every feature you could think of: military time, dual time, countdown timer, count up timer. It has a little light in it, which is fairly useless, but it does work. And these became popular again, believe it or not, because they're the most widely used watch in the Middle East. And believe it or not, this watch is the most widely copied or counterfeited watch in the world. You say to yourself, why would someone counterfeit this? Well, if you can sell these for $5 to millions of people, that's why they counterfeit them. And they became popular in the Middle East because they were very reliable. They're water resistant, they have screw down case backs, and the batteries last for years in them. And of course, not to mention, they can be used for IEDs. Yep, they can be used for explosive devices because of the alarm feature. But anyway, here are my favorite really, really cheap watches. Everything on this table is barely $20. I got matching ones for my brown shorts and for my green short days. And I will be using them all. Probably not this one too much. I'm not a real fan, but for 50 cents, I already had it. It came in a batch of watches that was brand new. I don't know why I got the brand new ones in there. But anyway, this is what we have. I hope you enjoyed my video of really cheap watches and how to repair a watch and put the hands back on. Very simple process, very easy to do. And I hope to be back to you soon. I'm going to do, my next video is probably going to be on the tool watch or the everyday beater. This will probably come back into the mix again on that video because I love this one so much. But I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave comments. If you have any questions, anything you'd like to see, please let me know. And most of all, if you like what I'm doing here, please, please, please subscribe. Thank you.